with Bev's Mangrove Honey Mead.
Our first reading on this, we took it almost a month ago. Actually, it was over a month ago. It was on December 21st. It was 1.000, as you can see here. Today is January 25th, and we're going to take our second reading. Why did it take us so long to get here? Life. It happens. It took a while. It's okay.
We also were letting it clear out some because we were noticing the striations were occurring, which means it was in the process of clearing. So time was just going to make that be even more so we gave it to it.
It still doesn't appear to be fully cleared out, but it looks much better. But this is still only the first racking, so it has time. All right, so today it's at 0.998. I'm gonna call that done. I'm not really all that worried about it. I don't think it's gonna go much further, so we're gonna call this one finished, and we're gonna do its first rack. Racking, moving from vessel A to vessel B. Vessel B needs to be at lower elevation than vessel A. Siphon is my preferred method. Auto siphon gets it started. You just put one tube in there. I have the cap on because there's some lease in here that I don't want to suck up. And I'm gonna go about halfway in and get it started with as few strokes as possible, usually. And then I'm going to hold this outside of all the leaves on the bottom and keep it from coming up into it. And we'll see in a minute when we're done. All right, we racked it. It's just the first racking. Got a little bit of sediment in there because I wanted to get as much product out as possible, so I don't worry about it too much. It's gonna, what's it gonna do?
It's gonna sit.
Right, for probably another couple of weeks, let that clear out, let all that extra sediment come out. What I do want to do though is degas this slightly now that I've disturbed it and possibly introduced a little bit of air, oxygen, whatever you want to call it. And yep, there's some gas in there still, so that's good. I don't generally degas manually, like with the drill and the whole thing. I like to let them sit, and I'll do this just a little bit to fill the chamber with CO2. Yeah, like that. Because I have a little bit more headspace than I'm really comfortable with, but it's not that bad, okay? This is not really a problem. If it was down here, yeah, it might be a little bit of an issue, but this is, well, you know what? Now's a good time to let's figure out how much alcohol we actually created here. So we started with a 1.094. That is our original specific gravity. And then today's gravity was 0.998, so minus 0.998. That is our OG minus FG. Gives me 0.096. Multiply that by 135. Some people use 131.25. We have a whole video on why I use 135. 135 is actually going to be more accurate once you get past, say, 10% or so. So I like to use that one. And that gives me 12.96. So you know what? 13%. Good enough. Call that a day. 13%, which means it could still technically turn to vinegar. However, past 10%, acetobacters have a lot more trouble. At 15%, they really can't do it anymore. So this is on the verge of that. Not all that worried about that. It's more the off flavors from oxygenation that are a concern. But with the amount of gas coming out of here, I don't think any oxygen that might have occurred from the siphoning racking process is still in there. So it's all good. And we will see you when this clears up and we rack again and bottle. All right, so another 2 weeks has gone by, and we were hoping that this would clear a bit more. Now, at this point, could we cold crash this and get it to clear? Maybe. Would that work? It's possible. I really don't cold crash. We don't really have the space. We have 3 fridges, and they're all full, okay? So there's just no room to cold crash, and it may be winter in Florida, but that doesn't really mean it's cold enough to cold crash outside. So that's not really something we would do. I could let this sit for months and see if it clears out, or I could just say, I'm not that worried about it. It's a little cloudy, so what? We're going to bottle it and just get it over with. That sounds horrible, but you know what I mean. I'm impatient. I have other videos we need to do. We want to get this out there so you guys can see it. So we're not going to worry about that little bit of haze. Instead, I'm going to pull the airlock. Chuck that into turbos. Derica's got a pitcher ready for us already. Got my auto siphon over here. I'm going to take the cap off the auto siphon because I believe there is not really anything in the bottom there to worry about. And I'm gonna go about halfway down here and get this started. So as we're getting to the bottom, I'm seeing some wispies floating around in the top of this. I'm trying to be really careful. Of course, I just jiggled it all over the place. I don't necessarily want those in my finished product. So I'm gonna be a little bit more careful. As it gets really close, I'm gonna pull it. We're gonna lose just a little bit more, maybe an ounce or two, but that way we don't get all those wispies into the brew. There we go. And that's something really important to understand. A little bit of loss is part of homebrew. It's almost impossible. Somebody's gonna ask, can I pour that through a coffee filter? Well, sure, if you really, really wanted to, you could. You could also oxygenate it and it could ruin it. You could do a lot of things that could be bad. To me, that's just not enough to worry about. I'll make more. I hate to be wasteful that way, but I will. I'll just make more. All right, so after racking, I have 108 ounces, which is 3,200 milliliters, which comes to 4.25 of these 750 ml bottles. But I know I overfill them a little bit, so I'm probably gonna end up using a little bit of this one. But we're gonna do a tasting right afterwards, so we're just gonna drink out of this one. Anyway, we're gonna bottle. 2 bottle, like we always do. Just add a bottling wand to the end of our hose here. And all a bottling wand is just a tube that has a stem valve at the end, also known as a springy thingy. And when you put that in the bottom of the bottle and you push, it lets the fluid flow. So that way you can pick it up and move it to the next bottle without spilling stuff all over the place. Can you do it without one? Of course, but you'll probably make more of a mess. Notice, no cap on the end of the auto siphon, and basically bottling is racking, but into bottles. All right, so we got 4.5 bottles. Well, 4.25 bottles. This is a half bottle. This is only a 375. So we got 4.25 bottles because I figured out that I fill each bottle about 50 mil more than a 750. So they're actually more like 800 mils, which is kind of odd because if I went lower, now it's below the shoulder, and that kind of bothers me because that means more headspace in a bottle that's going to sit for a long time. I don't like that. So overfill your bottles just a little bit. So, in case you didn't know, one thing that we do is we always keep one bottle for a 1-year tasting, and then the other ones, well, we drink them. The first one is usually our taster, and that gets put in the fridge afterwards if we didn't finish the whole thing. And today, it's probably just gonna get drank because there isn't all that much here. Half of a 375, I don't even know what that is. It's like 200, under 200 mils. As you can tell, 2 rather weak pours and it's almost gone. So, it makes us feel like we're really drinking, but not really. Now, this is young. It's about 7 weeks old at this point, so I'm not expecting it to be spectacular. And I want to point out something. Beverly, when she made hers, started with a higher gravity than we did, and it ended a little bit sweeter. There was like a 1012 or 1014 gravity, I think. So hers has a different profile altogether than this one. Well, it's still based on hers. We're following that recipe. That's why we didn't do a preliminary, does it need any adjustments before we bottled. We wanted to stay true to the recipe as much as possible.
This is a good illustration of how many different variables go into homebrew. And so even when you're following a recipe as close as possible,
it could come out totally different.
There could be a temperature difference, there could be a yeast strain mutation.
Sure.
So many different things could happen that would make yours turn out different. And we don't look at that as a downside. We actually look at that as a bonus because it's part of the chaos theory of enjoyment and creating something new and unique.
Now, I'm getting a little bit of the young smell in this.
But not nearly as much as I would anticipated.
Yeah, I would have thought this would be a lot harsher.
Like, the first word that came to my brain when I smelt this was soft.
Yeah, wait till you taste it. It's actually quite enjoyable. It's very dry, but there's something there. I get like a biscuity, buttery thing.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that at all. Totally like a buttery. There's nothing in here that should be buttery. It's tea made with a quarter cup of raisins, black tea, and Tazo wild sweet orange tea, mangrove honey, a little bit of bee pollen, and 71B. This is good. I like it. I'm not getting a lot of the orange that I did. We got to sample Beverly's, and hers was better. I'll say that. I think hers was better.
I think adding a little bit of back sweetening to what we have created here might improve it, but
age
honestly, I think this is really good. And as Brian said before, sugars are not necessarily his friend. So having something a little drier like this will make it easier for him to digest and to consume. And the fact that it's a low ABV will help with him, for him as well. this is definitely coming off as a
clean white wine.
Hot summer day refresher beverage.
Yeah, it's a nice, clean, crisp white wine. It doesn't linger. The flavors don't last super long. Let me go into the flavor travel thing. Okay, on the initial intake, I'm getting a little bit of honey note.
Yep.
Not a tremendous amount, but just enough. There's a little bit of a sweetness there that I want to say is almost a floral sweetness, like flowery kind of.
I'm getting, like, initially I'm going, oh, that's sweet, it's honey, and then it, like, nearly immediately transitions into a juicy fruit type note.
Okay.
Not like an overripe, heavy, dark, juicy fruit, but like a
By the way, we talked about clarity. This is like
fruit.
A 5 to a 6 on clarity. I wouldn't say it's clear. I wouldn't say it's super cloudy because I can actually read the paper through this.
Yeah.
Like, I can totally see through it in this quantity. So it's not as cloudy as we thought.
I would say it's more of a haze than a true cloudiness.
Yeah, it's not clear, but don't bother me. Yeah, that fruitiness, but then I get that there's a little bit of an astringent bitterness that's coming through.
Yep.
And that turns into almost a buttery, biscuity thing, which is so unusual. That's not something we've encountered before.
Now, have we used bee pollen in another
That was
thing?
the first time.
I'm wondering if the pollen created something new in this.
It might have.
I haven't heard anyone mention that before.
It works as a great nutrient, is my understanding.
But there's definitely something different in here, and I don't think it's the tea. Even though this is the first time we've used this particular tea, because Bev was gracious enough to offer us some.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's where that note is coming from.
It's something different. There's something here that I have not experienced, and I'm wondering if the bee pollen is doing that. I mean, for something this dry, this young, we should hate this. Mm-hmm. I'm not hating it. Mm. Don't get me wrong, this is not even in my top 10 of brews ever made. But I can totally see having this with food because it's that nice crisp white wine just to have a drink with certain meals, like my artichoke pasta. Would be a perfect pairing for this. Yes. We don't really do the food pairing thing with our tastings anymore because there's too wide of a range. There's just so many things that you can pair stuff with.
Too much.
Yeah. But yeah, this would go well with like an olive oil style pasta, something like that. Or even a brothy soup, like a chicken noodle soup, this would go well with. It's just got that white wine thing going on. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
So I think with some
what was
age,
the
this would be
ABV
incredible.
on this? 13? Yeah, it was 13.
13, yep, 13%. So it's not weak. This is not low. Our gravity started out lower than hers. I think she was like a 1.110 or 1.114. So we're like 20, I think it was like 20 or 25 points lower than her recipe came out. And as a result, hers ended at like a 1.010. So she had some more residual sweetness that we just don't have. I liked hers better. I'll be honest, I liked hers better. It had a little bit of that orange flavor. It had more honey character, which, you know, more honey. So, and it had some residual sweetness. But this is not bad.
Yeah.
I'll drink this. Plus, I really want to see what it does in a year. Like, I think in a year, this is going to be one of those like, oh man, I'm so glad we didn't mess with that. You know, it's going to be one of those. All right. Oh, you're not done.
That's okay. I can give a number even when I'm not done.
All right. So I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. And the way our scoring works is this. 1 means you'd probably dump it out. It's possibly toxic. You wouldn't give it to your worst enemy. It's just not something you're going to want to drink. 5 means I would drink it. I might not choose it first, but I would willingly drink it. Between 1 and 5 is varying levels of ick. 10 means there's nothing I would change. It doesn't necessarily mean perfect. It just means this is a really great, amazing beverage. If I had a selection to choose, that's probably the one I would choose first, okay? It doesn't, because we can't say perfect, because what's perfect? Everything's biased. And the whole thing is biased. I mean, we change our system every time we do a tasting. But if you go by our biases for what we like, you may like the same thing, you may like something different. Every once in a while, Derek and I are very different on our scoring. Sometimes we're almost exactly the same. Sometimes we've been exactly the same.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you would like it or wouldn't like it, okay? Just use it as a rough guide. But 10 basically means It's really, really amazingly freaking good, okay? There's just nothing I would do differently. Yeah, I don't know how else to say that.
So you got the gist. Let's get to this beverage, shall we?
1, 2, 3, 6.5. Okay, I just gave that long speech about how different things can be. Yeah, 6.5. This is better than some things that we've made.
Yep.
It's not as good as most other things that we've made that we scored higher.
Yep.
Because that's how that works. But it's really nice. I like it. I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I was expecting, because ours went so much drier than hers, that we weren't really going to appreciate it. I really didn't think I was going to like it much. But like I say, I kind of like it. I think it works. So, yeah. If you haven't seen the original video, go back and do it. We'll have a link to it below and probably up here and other places where you can find out where to do it. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.